Hey, today we're going to take a look at the second most common way to clean up or simplify equations. So just like when we talked about expressions, the same applies to equations. The second most common way is to use the distributive property. So it's most identified by parentheses, which means that you are going to hence distribute a number outside of those parentheses to what's inside. So just as kind of a further explanation, if I had two expressions here, only one of them actually is signifying of the distributive property. So this first one here, the difference between the two is what's inside of the parenthesis, right? This first example here on the left only has one single term of x. So this would just be the use of parentheses to show multiplication. So this actually is not the distributive property. The second example is when you have more than one term, and in this case, we have an x and we have a 7, so there are two terms in there grouped by parentheses. This time the parentheses are showing grouping with a term directly out front signifying that it's multiplying. So this is where we have seen and used these arrows to show that distribution or the sharing of the 3 with the x and then the 3 with the second term, a positive 7. Great, so taking a look at the next page, guys, this is on page 25 of your note sheet if you'd like to follow along with the examples. If you weren't in class, if you take a picture of your note sheet and submit it, you will get 5 points for that as well. All right, taking a look at the first example here, we have 3 on the outside of two terms inside of our grouping parentheses, x plus 2. So we're going to take that 3 and we're going to first multiply it with our x. And then we're going to take the 3 and multiply it by a positive 2, guys. You want to make sure that you're including the sign with the term. In this case, it's a positive 6. So in my calculator, 3 times 2 gives us a positive 6. So 3x, 3 times x is 3x. 3 and 2, as we mentioned, is a positive 6. And just like before with the combining like terms, even though I get just the 6 in my calculator, when I go to add it to my simplified expression here, I need to make sure to put that connector, that plus sign. All right, so second example here. Again, we have a 2 outside of a grouped parenthesis. So we're going to take the 2 and first multiply it with our first term, which is r. 2 times r. And again, the parentheses down here is just symbolizing multiplication. 2 times a single term. And then 2 times. Now, since I've already taken care of the r, right? Kind of like I can ignore it, cross it off for a minute. When I go to do my second multiplication here, you want to make sure, again, you're including that sign. So it's 2 times a negative 4. Because again, once I kind of cover up that r, that first term in the expression, it is a negative 4. So following through with the multiplication, 2r, anytime you have a number and a variable, you just push them together. And then the second part, we have 2 times negative 4. So again, if you need your calculator, go ahead and use it. Times negative 4, and we get a negative 8 answer. So again, this part works really nicely because, again, negative answers, when you write them down, they then act as a subtraction sign when it's put right next to that first term. All right, the last one here looks a little bit different. What is different? Well, it's this number that's being multiplied is on like the wrong side. And it does kind of trip students up a lot when we get a lot of negatives in there. So a good rule of thumb, just like we did with the expressions, is we can take that 4 and the multiplication properties that we know allow us to switch the order. So then once we've switched it and move it out front, same procedure, 4 times the first term. And then we're going to take our 4 and multiply it by a positive 6 because we have a plus sign there. Working through multiplication, again, 2 simple multiplication problems and your answers are pushed together. 4n for that first problem, and then 4 times 6 gives us a positive 24. So just making sure that you put that connector. All right, so there are some more problems down below. I'm going to do 3 together with you and then 3 on your own. I'll go ahead and finish those problems so that you can check your work. So let's go ahead and do the first 3 together here. So this box right here, 2 times x is 2x. And again, you can simplify, you can take out this middle step. This was to show you the thought process. You are more than welcome to jump straight to that simplified expression. So I know a number and a variable I just put together, right? 2 times x is 2x. Then when I go to do my second multiplication, I'm taking 2 times a positive 3. 2 and a positive 3 gives us a positive 6 answer, so plus 6. All right, let's go ahead and jump down to the one right below it. So starting out, 6 times 4, if you need to use your calculator, by all means, go ahead. 6 times 4 is 24. And then 6 times. Now again, guys, we want to make sure that we're including those signs, especially if it's a negative. It really does matter here. So we have 6 times a negative 1. There is a number also with my vario. So I'm going to multiply the numbers first, and again, a negative 6. And then that x just kind of, again, drops down with it. We buddy it right up to the term. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to this last one, bottom right-hand corner. And the reason why this is one of those tricky ones, again, where our 3 is lurking out back, we're more than welcome to bring it to the front and then go ahead and proceed with our distributing. So 3 times m, number and a letter, just go right next to each other. 3 times, hopefully you're seeing it, you guys, negative 5. So 3 times negative 5 gives us a negative 15 answer. Again, acts as subtraction when I'm buddying it up with that first term. So if you're joining online, go ahead and complete, put your video here on pause. Try these 3 blank boxes. I'll be back with you in a minute when you restart the video to go over those answers. All right, so if you're reviewing your answers, hopefully you tried those ones on your own. So this middle box here on the top, 8 times 2, 16. 8 times a positive 3n. Again, I'm going to multiply my numbers and get 24, and the letter just drops down with it. Top right one, 4 times y gives us 4y. And then when we do our second multiplication problem, 4 times a positive 2 gives us a positive 8. Okay, bottom one in the middle, 4 times n, 4n. 4 times a negative 9. That's one of those ones, very important that we take that sign with it. 4 times negative 9 is a negative 36. Again, acts like subtraction when we have it buddied up with that first term. All right, so all of those problems, whether you noticed it or not, let me go back here for a quick minute. All of those terms, you were distributing a positive. So all examples above, positive numbers. All examples down below, again, the number outside of our parenthesis was a positive value. So let's take a minute and discuss distributing a negative. This can be tricky sometimes if you are not a person of detail, but you're going to follow the same steps shown earlier. So just be careful. Try to really think of each value as a separate signed box term. Okay, so this first one here, same procedure. We have a negative 2 times x. So again, number and variable, push them together. The second multiplication here, we have negative 2 times a positive 7. My answer to that, if I throw it in my calculator or do it in my head, either way, you're going to end up with a negative 14. So not so bad in that one. Okay. If we take a look at this next one here, a little bit of more difficult way that it's written. First, we show the multiplication of my outside term right here in parentheses. Those parentheses really aren't needed. And on top of that, it has that term I'm distributing on the back end. So just like we did with that positive value before, we can move it to the front and then go ahead and proceed with our normal operations, guys. So we're going to go ahead and multiply the negative 3 times 5, negative 15. One more kind of little quick thing to look at. So when I multiply here, I have a negative 3 times a negative y. It's really like a negative 1y. So 2 negatives, this is again an area that could be a little bit tricky. Negative 3 times a negative 1 is actually going to give us a positive 3. And then again, easy to forget, but make sure that you're including that variable that's hanging out with it. And the last one is another way that you might see distributing a negative is when you just have this good old negative sign out front. This is kind of understood in the math world to mean a negative 1. So if it helps to write that in there, I often do, go right on ahead. It just helps kind of clear up what you're doing and what you're distributing and then proceed with your steps. So negative 1 times 2x gives us negative 2x. Then that second distribution here, we have negative 1 times a negative 11. So 2 negatives, if you remember your rules, do flip over to a positive when you're multiplying. So again, make sure you put that positive connector in there, plus 11. Because again, in your calculator, you're only going to see just the 11. So it's really easy, guys, to just write down your 11 and move on. But we need connectors when we're writing out the distributive property. So just some helpful hints I also included in your note sheet to reference. Again, if your second term is positive, just like I'd mentioned, you're going to need to put that plus sign in front of it to show addition. If your second term is negative, it's going to act as a subtraction when you're buddied up against that first answer. And note, it's not always going to be the same as the original problem. That's a common misconception between students, meaning that I have a plus sign in my original problem in my parentheses, but see how it switches to a negative for my answer? That is typical and very common when you're distributing a negative. So just be careful and be mindful that if you did believe that before, again, negative in my original problem, it's switched to positive here. There's plenty math examples where this does not hold true. So just wanted to pop that bubble if that was something you were holding on to. All right, so there's some practice problems below. We'll kind of do the same, do 3 together. You can try 3 on your own and then check them with me after you've completed. So taking a look at this first box, top right, -5 times n, -5n. Number and variable, easy enough, put them together. So -5 times a +4, that turns out to be a -20. And again, you don't need to put plus a -20. You can just write -20. And again, it acts like that subtraction when you're buddied up. Okay, second one here on the top, -1 times 4, -4. -1 times -y. Remember, this is like that -1. So -1 times -1. Two negatives do make a positive, guys. So it ends up being a +1y. So that part could be a little bit tricky. All right, taking a look at this bottom, or actually, let's go ahead and move down here. Let's do the fraction one together so we don't get fraction phobia. Again, you've got a calculator to help with your computations, but let's go ahead and do that together. So -3/4 p, that's the easy part. And number, no matter if it's a fraction or a whole number, this buddy's right up against that parenthesis. The second part here, we're taking -3/4 times -1. And if you need to, again, I'll show you that your calculator can clearly handle this. So we have parentheses around fractions. If you remember that, guys. And we're going to multiply it by -1. Now I do get a fraction, or I'm sorry, I do get a decimal answer. And I've always said to you, if you have fractions in the problem, you should keep the form true to the problem. So using that math button, turning it back, you get a +3/4. So again, I'm just going to add that onto my expression. All right, go ahead and try these other 3 on your own. Be careful this one. You can go ahead and move this term to the front and then proceed. So pause my video, go ahead and try those 3 videos, or those 3 problems, and then when you're ready, join us again just to check those. All right, so taking a look at the problems that you did together, as I mentioned, we're going to start in the top right-hand corner of your practice problems. This -3 term, it's on the back end. It's in parentheses to kind of even further stump you, but we discussed that you can just kind of, again, cross it off and move it to the front, and you can drop those parentheses just for a little bit more ease. So going through our problem, we have -3 and m makes -3m. -3 times -5 gives us a +15. Okay, bottom left, -4 and 3, -12. -4 and a +1, or just an a if you look at it like that, -4a. Okay, last one here, guys. So -1 and 2x gives us -2x. Multiplied my numbers, just threw on that x with it. And the second part here, we have -1 times -11, which makes a +11. So hopefully that kind of brought you back to distributive property and you feel a little bit more confident with that. Please complete the assignment listed in the modules. And again, you get participation points for doing your note sheet.